It was the moment everyone fell silent. My 50th birthday party at Fleming's Steakhouse. The champagne was flowing, conversations buzzed across the dimly lit room, and my wife Jessica stood up, clinked her glass dramatically, and announced to our 40 guests, "I think we all know who the real success story is in this marriage." She laughed, that hollow laugh I'd grown to recognize. Not quite malicious, but deliberately cutting. Poor David here still drives the same old Audi, while I just made partner. She raised her glass higher. "To my husband who's been riding my coattails for 20 years. The room erupted in awkward laughter. Some genuine, some nervous. Our daughter Mia, home from her first year at Princeton, joined in the loudest, her eyes never leaving her phone. I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I just smiled. Because sometimes silence is the deadliest weapon in a man's arsenal. What no one in that restaurant knew, what not a single person in that room had stopped to consider, was that every dollar in our joint accounts, the lake house Jessica loved to show off, Mia's full ride to Princeton that Jessica bragged about securing through networking, all of it had come from my family trust and silent investments I'd been managing for 2 decades. They didn't know because I never flaunted it, never held it over their heads, never used it as leverage. I looked around at our assembled friends, Jessica's law firm colleagues, country club acquaintances, neighbors from our Westlake Village community, all laughing at my expense, and something inside me shifted irreversibly. I saw my wife of 20 years not as the woman I fell in love with, but as someone who had forgotten who I was. So I stood up quietly, placed my napkin beside my untouched birthday cake, walked out the front door of Fleming's, and left it all behind me. But what they didn't know is that I was about to systematically dismantle the life that Jessica took for granted. Before we dive deeper, let me introduce myself. I'm David Mitchell, 50 years old, financial advisor, though I haven't actively worked with clients in years. I manage our family investments, mostly real estate and some tech startups that have done surprisingly well. I'm not flashy about it. I don't need to be. That's Jessica's department. We met at Stanford Law. I dropped out after my first year when my father died unexpectedly, leaving me the family business to manage. Jessica stayed, graduated with honors, and never let me forget it. She built her career meticulously at Bennett, Crawford & Schmidt, one of the most prestigious firms in Seattle. 20 years ago, her ambition was what attracted me to her fierce intelligence, her unwavering focus. But somewhere along the way, that ambition turned corrosive. We have one daughter, Mia, now 19 and studying political science at Princeton. She's brilliant but entitled, a carbon copy of her mother, down to the dismissive eye roll whenever I speak. I used to think we had a good marriage. Not perfect, but solid. I handled our finances, maintained our home, attended every single one of Mia's soccer games when Jessica was too busy with client meetings. I was the constant, reliable presence, the emotional foundation they both stood on, until I wasn't. Looking back, I can pinpoint exactly when things began to change. 6 years ago, Jessica was passed over for partner the first time. She came home that night, kicked off her heels so hard one cracked the hallway baseboard, and poured herself a double scotch. "Richard got it," she said, her voice flat. Richard, with his mediocre briefs and country club connections. I sat beside her on the couch, put my arm around her shoulders. "I'm sorry, Jess. You deserved it more." She stiffened under my touch. "What would you know about deserving partnership? You've never had to fight for anything in your life." The words stung, but I let them slide. She was hurting. "You'll make partner next time," I assured her. "You're the best lawyer they have." She drained her glass. "Next time I won't be so naive. This isn't about legal brilliance. It's about politics and perception." She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time that night. "We need to make some changes." Those changes came rapid fire. Jessica started working longer hours, networking aggressively. Our home became a showcase for dinner parties with senior partners. She revamped her wardrobe, joined 3 charity boards, started playing golf though she hated it. She was building a narrative, the brilliant attorney, the perfect wife, the community leader. And slowly my role in that narrative diminished. I was no longer her partner, her equal. I was a prop, trotted out at firm events, expected to smile and compliment her carefully crafted image. The first time I noticed the shift was at our neighbor's anniversary party last summer. I was telling a story about my recent fishing trip to Montana. Nothing extraordinary, just a pleasant memory, when Jessica cut me off mid-sentence. "David, honey, no one wants to hear about your fishing buddies," she said, patting my arm like I was a child. "Let's talk about something interesting." She turned to the group. "Did I tell you all about the Harper merger? My team closed it last week." I fell silent, swallowing the rest of my story. Our friends nodded eagerly, leaning in to hear about Jessica's latest professional triumph. Later that night, I brought it up. "That was humiliating, Jess. You completely dismissed me." She sighed, not looking up from her iPad. "Don't be so sensitive. No one wants to hear fishing stories when we could be discussing a $300 million merger." "That's not the point." "What is the point, David?" She finally looked at me. Irritation etched across her face. "You get to spend your days playing golf and taking fishing trips while I'm building a career. The least you could do is recognize when you're boring people." I didn't respond. What could I say? That my playing golf included managing the investments that paid for our lifestyle? That the fishing trip was a rare weekend away after months of handling everything at home? I'd never thrown our financial arrangement in her face before. It felt petty, beneath me, so I just walked away. But something shifted that night, a small crack in the foundation of what I thought we had. After that, I started noticing it everywhere. The way Jessica would check her phone when I was speaking at dinner. The way she introduced me at firm functions as my husband David, with no mention of what I did. The way she consulted me less and less on decisions about our life, our home, our daughter. One rainy Tuesday, I stopped by her office unexpectedly. I'd been downtown for a meeting with a startup founder I was considering investing in, and I thought it might be nice to surprise Jessica with lunch. We hadn't had a meal alone together in weeks. The receptionist smiled when I approached. "Mr. Mitchell, it's nice to see you. Is Jessica available?" I thought I might steal her for lunch. The woman's smile faltered. "Oh, I'm sorry. She's out to lunch already, with Mr. Crawford and the Westport team." "Of course, no problem." I turned to leave, then paused. "Actually, could you let her know I stopped by?" The receptionist tilted her head slightly. "She left specific instructions not to be disturbed, but I can tell her tomorrow." I smiled, masking the sting. "No need. It was just an impromptu thought." As I waited for the elevator, Jessica's assistant Melanie hurried toward me. "David," she said, lowering her voice, "Jessica's not at lunch with Crawford." I raised an eyebrow. "No?" Melanie glanced around. "She's with Thomas Bennett, the founding partner's son. They've been having lunch a lot lately." The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside, my mind racing. "Thanks, Melanie." "I just thought you should know," she said as the doors closed between us. I didn't jump to conclusions. Thomas Bennett was Jessica's ticket to partnership. Young, ambitious, with a direct line to the firm's leadership. Of course, she'd be cultivating that relationship. It was business. But that night, as Jessica breezed in at 9 p.m., smelling of expensive perfume and carrying a shopping bag from Nordstrom, I found myself watching her with new eyes. "Good meeting with Crawford?" I asked casually. She set down her bag, kicked off her heels. "Oh yes, productive." "What's in the bag?" She smiled, pulling out a silk tie in deep burgundy. "For you, actually. I saw it and thought it would bring out your eyes." I took the tie, rubbed the expensive fabric between my fingers. "What's the occasion?" "The firm gala next month. We need to look perfect." She kissed my cheek and headed upstairs. "I'm exhausted. Don't wait up." I sat with that tie in my hands long after she'd gone to bed. A peace offering? A guilty conscience? Or simply another prop for her perfect life tableau? One evening, I overheard her on the phone with her sister. "David? No, he's just watching baseball or something. You know how he is, content with the absolute minimum, no ambition whatsoever." 20 years of partnership reduced to no ambition whatsoever. I stood there, phone call records in my hand. I'd been sorting through bills, tracking some unusual charges, listening to my wife dismiss 2 decades of my life as insignificant. The records showed 3 calls to a number I didn't recognize, each lasting over an hour, all placed when I was supposed to be out of town. I didn't confront her, not yet. I tucked that information away, Another crack in the foundation. The unknown number bothered me more than it should have. Late that night, after Jessica had taken a sleeping pill and drifted off, I used her phone to check. The number belonged to Thomas Bennett. 3 calls, each over an hour, while I was at a conference in San Francisco. Business calls don't happen at 11 p.m. They don't last until 1 a.m. I replaced her phone on the nightstand and went downstairs to pour myself a drink. Was Jessica having an affair? Did I even care anymore? The realization that I wasn't sure which answer would hurt more told me everything I needed to know about the state of our marriage. The next morning, I called my old college roommate, Alex, now a private investigator in Portland. "I need information," I told him, discreetly. "On your wife?" He didn't sound surprised. 25 years of friendship meant he'd witnessed the slow erosion of my marriage firsthand. "On Thomas Bennett, and possibly on Jessica's activities when I'm out of town." Alex was silent for a moment. "You sure you want to go down this road, Dave? Sometimes it's better not to know." "I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with." "Okay, give me a week." That week was one of the longest of my life. I moved through our routines like an actor reading lines. I smiled at breakfast. I asked about Jessica's cases. I helped Mia with her political theory paper over Zoom. I maintained the illusion of normalcy while everything inside me was in chaos. Alex's report came via encrypted email. Thomas Bennett had a reputation for aggressively pursuing female associates and junior partners. 2 quiet settlements in the past 5 years, currently separated from his wife. And yes, he and Jessica had been spotted together outside of work. Intimate dinners, drinks at the Four Seasons bar, once entering his downtown condo building at 10 p.m. and not leaving until morning. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Jessica was almost certainly having an affair with the founding partner's son, a man who could make or break her career ambitions. I closed the file and sat in the dark of my home office. I should have felt rage, betrayal, heartbreak. Instead, I felt a strange, detached clarity. This wasn't about love. It hadn't been for a long time. This was about power, ambition, and the narrative Jessica was constructing for herself. A narrative that increasingly had no place for me. Mia was no better. My daughter, who I'd raised with every advantage, who I'd supported through every phase, had become a stranger to me. Her eyes permanently fixed to her phone, her responses to my questions monosyllabic at best. Last Thanksgiving, I tried to engage her about her studies. "How's political science treating you, sweetheart?" I asked, passing her the sweet potatoes. "It's whatever," she muttered, not looking up from her phone. "She's thriving," Jessica interjected. "Professor Harmon told me she's the most promising student he's had in years." She and Mia exchanged knowing smiles, a private club I wasn't part of. "When did you speak to her, Professor?" I asked. "Oh, I have lunch with several faculty members whenever I'm in Princeton for work," Jessica said casually. "Networking is everything, David. You'd know that if you'd finished law school." Another dig, another reminder of my supposed inadequacy. I noticed Mia smirk at her mother's comment. "I got that internship with Senator Grandin, by the way," Mia announced, still addressing her mother exclusively. "The one Mom's client recommended me for." "That's wonderful," I said. "When were you going to tell me?" Mia shrugged. "I just did." "We discussed it last week on our call," Jessica said. "It was confirmed yesterday." I nodded, fork suspended midair. My wife and daughter had entire conversations, made life decisions, celebrated victories, all without me. I had become an afterthought in my own family. That night, I went through our financial records again. Mia's full scholarship to Princeton, a fiction Jessica had created. In reality, I was paying every penny of her $80,000 annual tuition through my family trust. The lake house Jessica loved to host firm retreats at, purchased entirely with proceeds from a tech investment I'd made a decade ago. For years, I'd kept our financial arrangements quiet, not wanting money to define our relationship. I believed we were partners, each contributing in our own way. Now I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. In my silence, I'd allowed them to rewrite the narrative of our family, casting me as the unnecessary supporting character in their success story. The day after Thanksgiving, I took a long walk alone by the lake. The water was slate gray under the overcast sky, rippling with the cold November wind. I thought about my father, who had built our family business from nothing, who had taught me that true success wasn't about accolades or prestige, but about impact and integrity. Never let anyone make you feel small, he told me once. Not even the people you love. I'd failed him in that regard. I'd allowed myself to be diminished, one small dismissal at a time, until I'd almost forgotten who I was. As I stood by the water's edge, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront Jessica about Thomas Bennett. Not yet. I wouldn't blow up our family over an affair that was likely as much about ambition as attraction. But I would stop enabling the fiction that I was irrelevant. I would reclaim my place, not as Jessica's accessory, but as a man in his own right. I started with small changes. I declined Jessica's invitation to the firm's holiday party, opting instead to attend a board meeting for a tech incubator I'd been funding. I moved my investment records from our shared home office to a private space downtown. I scheduled a long overdue lunch with the dean of Princeton's political science department, not as Mia's father, but as a potential donor interested in their public service initiatives. Jessica noticed the shift immediately. "You're being weird," she commented one evening in December, watching me pack an overnight bag. "Where are you going?" "San Jose, meeting with a founder I'm considering backing." She frowned. "You never mentioned this." "You never asked," I replied, zipping the bag closed. "I'll be back on Wednesday." "The Crawford dinner is Tuesday. I told them you'd be there." I paused. "You'll have to tell them I had a prior commitment." "David, this is important. Crawford's wife specifically asked if you'd be coming. And you specifically didn't ask if I had plans before committing me." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "What's gotten into you lately?" "Nothing," I said calmly. "I'm just honoring my own commitments for a change." I left for San Jose feeling lighter than I had in months. The meeting went well. A promising AI healthcare platform that could revolutionize rural medicine, and I committed to a substantial seed investment. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Decisive, engaged, valued for my insight rather than my ability to play the supportive husband. When I returned, Jessica was cold, distant. She'd had to attend the Crawford dinner alone, and apparently Margaret Crawford had asked about my absence with noticeable concern. "She thinks we're having problems," Jessica said accusingly. "Aren't we?" I asked quietly. Jessica's gaze faltered. For a moment I saw uncertainty in her eyes, a crack in the polished facade. Then her phone buzzed. Thomas Bennett, I was sure. And the moment passed. "Don't be dramatic," she said, already typing a response. "We're fine." But we weren't fine. We were two people living parallel lives that occasionally intersected for social appearances. The realization should have devastated me. Instead, it felt like permission to finally stop pretending. Christmas came and went. I bought Jessica the diamond earrings she'd hinted at for months. She gave me a golf club membership renewal to the club I'd been a member of for 15 years, the club where I'd hosted the charity tournament that raised $2 million for children's cancer research last year, the club she rarely visited but loved to reference in conversation. "You spend so much time there anyway," she said, already checking her emails as I opened the envelope. Mia gave me a gift card to Brooks Brothers, the exact amount, $100. This from the daughter whose education I was funding entirely, whose apartment in Princeton I furnished, whose credit card bills I paid without question. "Thanks for the thought," I said quietly. "Mom picked it out," Mia admitted, not bothering to look up from her phone. After they'd gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room, the Christmas tree lights casting soft shadows across the floor. I thought about my father again, about the legacy he'd left me. Not just financial security, but a sense of purpose, a belief that my life should mean something beyond my bank balance or social connections. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost sight of that purpose. I'd allowed myself to be defined by Jessica's ambitions, by Mia's achievements, by the superficial trappings of success rather than its substance. No more. Later that week, I met with James Harrison, my longtime attorney and trustee of my family's estate. I'd known James since college, a shrewd, discreet man who had guided me through my father's complex estate and subsequent business dealings. "I need to make some changes," I told him, sliding a folder across his desk. James reviewed the documents, his expression revealing nothing. "You're restructuring almost everything." "Yes. May I ask why?" I considered the question. "Let's call it an overdue correction." James nodded, understanding the subtext. The changes to your daughter's trust are particularly significant. She needs to learn the value of what she's been given. And your wife? I met his gaze directly. I'm done being Jessica's stepping stone. James leaned back in his chair. These are decisive moves, David. Once set in motion, they'll be difficult to reverse. I'm not looking to reverse them, I said firmly. I'm looking to rebuild, on my terms this time. My birthday approached, February 18th. I'd always kept it low-key, but this year Jessica insisted on a party at Fleming's. 50 is a milestone, she declared. We need to do it properly. I should have recognized it for what it was. Not a celebration of me, but another networking opportunity for her. The guest list was revealing. 38 of her colleagues and connections, 2 of my friends. The night of the party arrived. I put on my best suit, the one Jessica had selected for me from Nordstrom last year. The Tom Ford makes you look successful, she'd said, a backhanded compliment if I'd ever heard one. We arrived at Fleming separately. Jessica went early to make sure everything was perfect. I drove myself, parking my Audi A6 between her new Tesla and her colleague Richard's Porsche. The car I drove because it was practical, reliable, and paid off, not because it was all I could afford. Another detail lost on Jessica. The party was in full swing when I arrived. Jessica held court near the bar, stunning in a black Armani dress, champagne flute in hand. She air-kissed my cheek when I approached. There's the birthday boy, she said loudly, fashionably late to his own party. Traffic, I murmured, though we both knew I was exactly on time, as always. For the next hour, I circulated through the crowd, accepting birthday wishes from people who barely knew me, many of whom called me David, with the hesitant tone of someone who wasn't entirely sure that was my name. One of the few genuine moments came when Jack, my oldest friend, pulled me aside near the coat check. You hanging in there? He asked quietly. What do you mean? Jack gave me a knowing look. Come on, Dave. I've known you since we were 18. This isn't you. He gestured around at the corporate crowd. None of this is you. I sighed. It's complicated. It always is. He squeezed my shoulder. Just remember who you are, man. Don't get lost in her version of your life. His words stayed with me as I rejoined the party, accepting another glass of champagne I didn't want, listening to another story about Jessica's brilliance in the courtroom. Dinner was served, filet mignon for everyone except Jessica and 3 of her friends, who had special ordered Chilean sea bass. I was seated at the center of the long table, Jessica to my right, her managing partner to my left. Mia sat 3 seats away, whispering with Richard's college-age son. That's when it happened. Jessica stood, glass in hand, that performative smile on her face. I'd like to make a toast to my husband on his 50th birthday. And then the words that finally broke everything. I think we all know who the real success story is in this marriage. Poor David here still drives the same old Audi, while I just made partner. To my husband, who's been riding my coattails for 20 years. Laughter rippled around the table. I saw Richard elbow the associate beside him, smirking. I saw Mia giggle behind her hand. I saw the pity in my friend Jack's eyes from the far end of the table. In that moment, everything crystallized. I had become a punchline, the underachieving husband, the necessary prop in Jessica's narrative of self-made success. So I smiled. Not the tight, embarrassed smile of a man wounded, but the calm smile of a man who has finally seen the truth with perfect clarity. I placed my napkin next to my plate, stood up, and walked out without a word. Outside in the parking lot, the February air was sharp, clarifying. I got into my sensible Audi and drove, not home, but to our lake house on Mercer Island. The place was empty, pristine. I sat on the deck overlooking the water, watching the Seattle skyline glitter across the bay. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Jessica, then Mia, then Jessica again. I turned it off. For the first time in years, perhaps decades, I allowed myself to feel everything. The humiliation, the invisibility, the slow erosion of my dignity in my own home, and beneath it all, a simmering anger I'd suppressed for too long. I spent the night at the lake house. In the morning, I drove to my office downtown, not the investment firm where I occasionally consulted, but my private office in a building I owned on 4th Avenue. Another detail Jessica found irrelevant. My assistant Monica looked surprised when I walked in. Mr. Mitchell, happy birthday. Belated, I guess. We didn't expect you today. Change of plans, I said. I need you to set up meetings with my attorney, my accountant, and the bank. Today, if possible. Monica, efficient as always, didn't ask questions. By noon, my calendar was full. First, I met with James Harlow, my attorney of 30 years, the man who had structured my family trust after my father died. I need to execute those changes we discussed, I told him. All of them. Today. James raised an eyebrow but nodded. I'll have the papers ready within the hour. By the end of the day, my plan was in motion. The lake house was transferred solely to my name. Mia's unlimited credit card was replaced with one carrying a modest limit. The family trust that paid for Princeton was restructured. Tuition would continue, but the substantial inheritance she'd expected at 25 was now contingent on completing both her education and 2 years of public service work. Most significantly, I withdrew my silent investment in Bennett, Crawford, and Schmidt, a substantial stake I'd made years ago through a holding company at Jessica's request. It's just business sense, she'd argued. You have the capital, they need investors, and it helps my position at the firm. What she didn't know was that my investment had grown to represent nearly 18% of the firm's operating capital. My withdrawal wouldn't bankrupt them, but it would create serious cash flow issues, especially with their planned expansion to Los Angeles. I also made one phone call to Robert Bennett, the firm's founding partner and Thomas's father. Robert, it's David Mitchell. David, what a pleasant surprise. Jessica just made partner. You must be thrilled. About that, I said calmly. I think we should meet. There are some matters concerning your son and my wife that you should be aware of. A pause. I see. When would be convenient? Tomorrow. The Metropolitan Grill. Noon. I'll be there. I spent the night at the lake house again, not answering the increasingly frantic calls and texts from Jessica. Let her wonder. Let her worry. Let her feel, for once, what it was like to be powerless in a narrative someone else was controlling. The next morning, I received a text from Mia. Dad, where are you? Mom's freaking out. I finally responded, I'm taking some time to myself. I'm safe. Her reply came instantly. Whatever, just call Mom. She's being dramatic about it. No concern for me. No recognition that I might be hurt. Just annoyance at the inconvenience my absence was causing. 3 hours later, her tone changed dramatically. Dad, something's wrong with my credit card. The bursar's office also called about tuition. Are you doing this? I didn't respond. Let her connect the dots herself. My lunch with Robert Bennett was illuminating. I laid out everything. The late-night calls, the private dinners, the overnight stay at Thomas's condo. I also shared the intelligence my investigator had gathered about the previous settlements with female associates. This pattern of behavior is troubling, I said, watching his face carefully. And it poses a significant liability risk for your firm. Robert's expression was grim. Thomas has always been impulsive, but this crosses a line. Yes, it does. What do you want, David? I want Thomas removed from any leadership position at the firm. I want a full review of your harassment policies, and I want Jessica's partnership status reconsidered in light of her ethical lapses. Robert nodded slowly. And your investment withdrawal? That stands regardless. I'm no longer comfortable having my capital tied to your firm. You realize this will create significant difficulties for us. Yes, I said simply. I do. I left the restaurant feeling lighter than I had in years. I wasn't vindictive by nature, but there was a profound satisfaction in finally standing my ground, in refusing to be the convenient backdrop to Jessica's ambitions any longer. When I returned to the lake house, Jessica was waiting in the driveway, her Tesla parked haphazardly as if she'd arrived in a hurry. She looked disheveled, her usual polish missing. What the hell are you doing? She demanded as I approached. The credit cards, Mia's tuition, the firm investment. Are you having some kind of breakdown? I regarded her calmly. No breakdown, just clarity. You can't just withdraw millions from the firm without notice. Do you have any idea what that's going to do to our reputation? To my position? Your position, I repeated. That's what matters to you, isn't it? Not the fact that you humiliated me in front of 40 people. Not the fact that you've been having an affair with Thomas Bennett. Just your precious position." She paled. "How did you—" "No, I've known for months, Jessica. Did you really think I was that oblivious? That pathetic?" "It wasn't an affair," she protested weakly. "It was complicated." "No, it wasn't. It was actually quite simple. You saw an opportunity to advance your career, and you took it, regardless of the cost to our marriage." "That's not fair." "What's not fair," I cut her off, "is making your husband a punchline in your success story when that same husband has been bankrolling your entire life." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "Is that what this is about? Money? You're punishing me because I hurt your male pride?" "This isn't about pride," I said evenly. "It's about respect. Something you clearly don't have for me, our marriage, or even yourself." "So you're what? Divorcing me? Cutting me off?" "I haven't decided yet, but I've reclaimed what's mine. My dignity, my property, my financial independence. What happens next is up to you." Jessica's phone rang, the firm's ringtone. Her face, already pale, went ashen as she answered. I could hear Robert Bennett's voice, though not his words. I didn't need to. I could read everything in Jessica's expression. Shock, dismay, panic. "Robert, please," she said, her voice trembling. "There must be some misunderstanding." She fell silent, listening. Then, "But I just made partner. You can't possibly—" More silence. Her knuckles whitened around the phone. "Yes, I understand. I'll be there tomorrow." She hung up, staring at me with a mixture of fury and disbelief. "You went to Robert?" "I did. They're suspending my partnership pending an ethics review. Thomas has been placed on indefinite leave." Her voice rose. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've done exactly what you taught me to do, Jessica. I played the game. I networked. I leveraged my assets for maximum impact." I smiled thinly. "Isn't that what success looks like?" She lunged forward suddenly, palm raised to slap me. I caught her wrist easily, holding it firmly but not painfully. "Don't," I said quietly. "You've already lost enough dignity today." I released her. She stumbled back, tears forming in her eyes, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her in months. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "I want you to understand exactly what you've thrown away," I said. "Not just a husband who loved you, but the foundation that made your entire carefully constructed life possible. And then what? You'll forgive me? We'll start over?" I shook my head. "I don't know yet. That depends on whether there's anything left to salvage." 3 days later, the story broke in Seattle legal circles. Thomas Bennett's leave of absence, the review of the firm's harassment policies, Jessica's partnership deferral. No one outside the inner circle knew my role in it all, but speculation was rampant. Jessica moved into a hotel, claiming she needed space to think. In reality, she couldn't face me, couldn't reconcile the passive husband she'd taken for granted with the man who had systematically dismantled her professional achievement in a single day. Mia flew home from Princeton, shocked and confused by the sudden chaos. She found me at the lake house, sitting on the deck with a whiskey, watching the sunset. "Dad," she said, her voice small and uncertain. "What's happening?" "Mom won't really explain." I looked at my daughter, so much like Jessica in appearance, in ambition, in the cutting sharpness that had seemed clever until it was turned against me. "Your mother made some choices," I said simply. "Now she's facing the consequences. But the tuition, my card, are you punishing me too?" "Not punishing, teaching. You're an adult now, Mia. It's time you understood where your privilege comes from and what it costs." She sank into the chair beside me, uncharacteristically subdued. "Mom said you've always been jealous of her success, that you couldn't handle her finally becoming partner." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Is that what she told you?" "Yes." "And you believed her?" Mia shrugged uncomfortably. "I don't know what to believe anymore." I turned to face her fully. "Then let me make it simple. Every dollar of your tuition? From me. The apartment in Princeton? Me. The unlimited credit card you've been maxing out on weekend trips to New York? Also me." Her eyes widened. "But Mom said—" Your mother has been taking credit for my financial support for years, just like she's been taking me for granted. I paused, letting that sink in. You're welcome to continue believing her version of events, but your lifestyle will reflect the reality of who's actually funding it. Over the next week, Jessica tried repeatedly to reach me through intermediaries, her sister, mutual friends, even her attorney. I refused to engage. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a reckoning, and it would happen on my terms or not at all. 10 days after I walked out of Fleming's, Jessica finally came to the lake house alone. Without the armor of her professional persona, she looked tired, defeated. I met with the ethics committee yesterday, she said, standing awkwardly in the living room. They've officially rescinded my partnership offer. I nodded but said nothing. Thomas has been terminated. Apparently, there were other complaints that came to light once women felt safe to come forward. She hesitated. I want you to know, it wasn't what you think. I held up a hand. I don't care about the details, Jessica. The betrayal wasn't about sex. It was about respect. She nodded, tears welling. I know that now. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry, David. Truly sorry. For the toast, for Thomas, for everything. 20 years of marriage, and it took losing everything for you to see me, I said quietly. That's the real tragedy here. Can we try to fix this? She asked, her voice breaking. I studied her face, the face I'd loved for so long, the face that had looked at me with dismissal and contempt for too many years. I don't know, I answered honestly, but it won't be quick, and it won't be on your terms. You need to decide if you can accept that. Jessica left that night, back to her hotel room, back to the wreckage of the career she'd prioritized over our marriage. I didn't know if she'd return. I didn't know if I wanted her to. What I did know was that I would never again shrink myself to fit someone else's narrative. I would never again allow my worth to be determined by another person's ambition. 2 weeks after Jessica's visit, I received an unexpected call from Thomas Bennett. His voice was tense, controlled anger barely beneath the surface. Mitchell, I think we need to talk. Do we? I asked calmly. You've ruined my career, my reputation, all because your wife preferred my company to yours. Pretty pathetic response from a so-called man. I almost laughed at his transparent attempt to provoke me. Interesting perspective, Thomas. Is that what you told the other women too, before they filed complaints? A pause. Those are baseless accusations. Yet here you are, terminated by your own father's firm. Quite the fall. This isn't over, he hissed. I have connections you can't even imagine. So do I replied evenly. The difference is, mine aren't built on exploiting women and riding daddy's coattails. Good luck with your job search, Thomas. I hear the market for disgraced executives is pretty tight these days. I hung up, smiling slightly. His call told me everything I needed to know about Jessica's relationship with him. A man defending his innocent friendship wouldn't be so bitter about its consequences. The Seattle legal community, like all closed professional circles, thrives on gossip. Within days of Thomas's termination and Jessica's partnership reversal, the rumors were flying. Some said she'd been caught embezzling client funds. Others whispered about an affair with a married partner. A few sources even suggested she'd threatened to sue the firm for gender discrimination when passed over for partnership. None of these rumors were true, but I made no effort to correct them. Jessica had spent years crafting her professional image at the expense of our marriage. Now she could experience what it felt like to have others control her narrative. One evening I received a call from Margaret Crawford, the wife of Jessica's former mentor at the firm. David, darling, she cooed into the phone. We've missed you at the club events. Is everything all right with you and Jessica? Just taking some time to reevaluate priorities, I said diplomatically. Well, I wanted you to know that we don't believe a word of what's being said. Jessica was always so professional, so dedicated. That's kind of you, Margaret. And we'd love to have you at the fundraiser next month. Just you, of course. No pressure to bring Jessica. Under the circumstances, I understood immediately. Jessica wasn't just losing her job. She was being excised from their social circle. The same people who had laughed at her toast were now distancing themselves, preserving their own connections to power and influence. It was a brutal reminder of the superficiality of the world she'd prioritized over our marriage. Mia faced her own reckoning. Without her unlimited credit card and with the Princeton financial aid office suddenly requiring her to complete detailed scholarship applications, she was confronted with the reality of her privilege for the first time. She called me late one night, her voice strained. "Dad, I'm struggling here." "With what?" "Everything. The financial aid forms are impossible. My friends keep inviting me to New York for the weekend, and I can't go. The bursar's office is treating me like some kind of scholarship case." "Welcome to the real world," I said, not unkindly. "Most of your classmates have been navigating this from day one." "But why now? Why are you doing this to me?" "I'm not doing anything to you, Mia. I'm simply expecting you to take responsibility for your life and education. Something your mother and I should have insisted on years ago." Her voice softened. "I found Mom crying in her hotel room yesterday. She looks awful." A manipulation tactic I recognized from her childhood, appealing to my sympathy for Jessica to get what she wanted. "Your mother is an adult who made her choices," I said firmly. "And so are you. So that's it? You're just done with both of us?" "No, I'm done enabling behavior that diminishes me. There's a difference." By the end of the spring semester, Mia had withdrawn from Princeton, unable to navigate the financial aid process and unwilling to accept the modest allowance I now provided. She transferred to the University of Washington, a fine school, but not the prestigious Ivy League credentials she'd expected to ride into a political career. Jessica, meanwhile, found herself ostracized from the legal elite of Seattle. The ethics investigation had damaged her marketability, and the whispered rumors did the rest. After 3 months of unsuccessful job hunting at comparable firms, she accepted a position at a small family law practice in Tacoma, a significant step down in prestige and compensation. She sold her Tesla, moved to a modest apartment, and began the humbling process of rebuilding her career from a position of diminished status. One rainy April afternoon, she appeared at my downtown office unannounced. Monica hesitated before letting her in, clearly uncertain about the protocol. "It's fine," I told her. "Give us a few minutes." Jessica looked different. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple blouse and slacks. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail rather than the elaborate styling she'd once preferred. Most noticeably, her eyes had lost the sharp, calculating edge I'd grown accustomed to. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, sitting across from me. "A lot of therapy, too." I nodded, waiting. I thought success meant accolades, partnership, recognition. I thought if I just achieved enough, I'd finally feel worthy. She met my gaze directly. "But all I've done is destroy the one genuine thing in my life." "Our marriage was real once," I agreed quietly. "I was so focused on being seen by everyone else that I stopped seeing you." She took a deep breath. "I don't expect forgiveness, David. I don't even expect a second chance. But I needed you to know that I understand now. What I lost. Who I lost." I studied her, looking for the performance, the calculation. I couldn't find it. "What do you want, Jessica?" "A chance to start over. Not as husband and wife necessarily. Maybe just as friends. People who knew each other once and might know each other again." I considered her words carefully. The old Jessica would have demanded reconciliation, would have tried to leverage my lingering feelings, would have cast herself as the victim. This woman before me seemed different, humbled perhaps, but also more authentic than she'd been in years. "I'm having dinner at the lake house on Friday," I said finally. "Nothing fancy, just grilling on the deck. You're welcome to join me." A small smile lacking the polished brilliance of her old expressions, but somehow more genuine. "I'd like that." She stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of what you did. Not to me, that hurt like hell, but standing up for yourself, being the man I always knew you were, but was too selfish to appreciate." After she left, I sat alone in my office, watching the rain streak the windows of the building I owned, the empire I'd built quietly while she collected accolades and recognition. I didn't know if I could ever trust Jessica again. I didn't know if our marriage could or should be salvaged from the wreckage of her ambition and my silent resentment. But for the first time in years, we were seeing each other clearly, without the distorting lens of her narrative. Mia was coming to dinner on Friday too, Part of her own gradual reconciliation with the reality of her upbringing. She was working part-time now, experiencing for the first time what it meant to earn rather than simply receive. Maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ashes of what we'd lost. Not the same family, certainly, but perhaps a more honest one. Whatever happened, I would face it as myself, not as Jessica's accessory, not as Mia's ATM, but as David Mitchell, a man who had finally remembered his own worth and would never again allow anyone to make him forget it.